Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some seafood chowder with some snickerdoodles with a twist. I'm going to use pumpkin spice instead of cinnamon, even there's cinnamon pumpkin spice. So with other spices to make our sourdough snickerdoodles. And we're going to prep up a sandwich using the rest of our like garlic Parmesan challah that we baked up last night. So let's start by getting our cookie dough made. Let's see, do I want to do? Let's start by, we're going to do a quick saute up of our seafood, and then we'll do our onions and whatnot for this. So to make my seafood chowder, I use this bag called Seafood Medley. It's in the freezer section. It's actually really reasonably priced, but it has like clams, now I'm blanking on clams, shrimp, calamari, and squid. So it has like a bunch of different like seafood in it. And if you're like me, absolutely love seafood. But you want to always toss it, cook it up a little bit, and before we do it, like the rest of things, you don't want to just throw it into the soup. You just want to give it a quick saute to bring up the flavors. So I'm going to put about, 2 teaspoons or so, not even, maybe a teaspoon and a half of olive oil in here. We're going to get it nice and hot. And then let me grab my tongs because we'll pick up our seafood with our tongs so that it will drain out any of the extra liquid. I try to pat it dry as much as possible after it was thawed, but anytime you have frozen seafood, it's typically been like flash freezed, and what happens is there's extra moisture and liquid in it. So just always try to squeeze out a bit of that. So once this is nice and hot, we'll throw our little seafood medley in. But I guess while we're waiting for that, let's get our butter creaming for our snickerdoodles. Okay, so we're going to use a cup of butter, which is the same as 2 sticks. You really want it to be room temperature or to soften it up so that it creams together better. I'm going to be using my hand mixer for this, but you could also use a stand mixer. And if you really want to work your arms, you could do traditional just with a spoon. It's just going to take you a lot longer. So we've got 2 sticks of butter, and then we're going to add in our sugars. This is a primarily heavy granulated sugar recipe, but we do have a 1/3 cup of brown sugar in it. So we're going to use 1 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. And this makes a whole bunch of snickerdoodles, although they never last long in my house because they're one of my kids' kind of favorite cookies. So we're going to do 1 1/3. Let's see. There we go. Of the granulated, and then we're going to do a 1/3 cup of the brown sugar. Okay. That's about a 1/3 cup. And we're going to cream our sugars into our butter. Now we will use also a 1/3 cup later of granulated sugar mixed with pumpkin spice for that kind of snickerdoodle coating on there, but not until. Then let's get these guys starting to cream. There we go. So again, you want to use softened butter or room temperature butter. It's going to cream a lot faster than if you try to use cold butter. There we go. So I'm going to mix these until pretty much all of my butter has kind of broken up and they've become kind of one homogeneous mixture. There we go. And let's take a pause real quick because I can tell my oil is nice and hot. So we're ready to drop our seafood in for a really quick sear on it. And this is just going to give it a better texture and flavor in our chowder. So as you can see, it's nice and hot. Again, we have calamari, squid, clams, and shrimp in here. And I'm just going to do just a quick cook up on it with a little bit of seasonings and spices. And then we will take it back out and do the rest. But you see I'm using my tongs because even though I patted it dry after it de-thawed, there was still extra liquid in here for this. So we're just gonna do a nice quick kind of high sear on this. I'm gonna still save this bowl to put it back in here because then we'll put everything back in our chowder and cook it some more. But let's season it up right now with a little bit of garlic salt. Don't need much because we're going to use primarily some Old Bay. So it was probably like a half a teaspoon of garlic salt. And now we're going to use about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of Old Bay. Give it a good and a little sprinkle of pepper, like a half a teaspoon of pepper. Okay, we're going to let that just cook on high for just a few minutes until everything's kind of cooked through, gets a nice kind of little sear on it on there. So let's finish up creaming together our egg and our butter, or not our egg, our butter and our sugars. Here we go. So just making sure I don't have any big clumps of butter. Here we go. Now, one of the main differences between creaming with a stand mixer using one paddle and creaming with the egg beaters on here is the egg beater is going to give you more of a crumbly mixture, but if you push it all together, it would look the same as if you had just your paddle attachment. So they're kind of slightly different kind of creaming, but they end up the same. We're going to use 1 egg plus 1 yolk. So let me get a small bowl here for our yolk. And this is going to give us a nice rich texture to our cookies. It won't make them super fluffy, which you don't want, but it's going to make you a nicer, chewier kind of cookie. And now let's cream these guys in here. There we go. So again, 1 egg plus 1 yolk. Okay, now we've got kind of a good little paste starting to form. Let's come check over here since we've got a nice kind of steam going up. And this again is our seafood base for our chowder that we started with. I'm going to start kind of scooping it out now because it all should be cooked up with some seasoned flavors. We don't want to just leave these in there when we're cooking our, like to do the rest of it because it's going to make the seafood too chewy. But I do like to saute it up really quick so that we get this kind of like great flavor on it, which you can't get when you put it in the soup, just straight up. And I'm trying to cook off a little bit of that seasoning so that when we start throwing in our onions in here in a little bit, we'll have this kind of nice little flavored base at the bottom with as little liquid as possible. But I'm going to turn it off now. But this is going to also give you that nice seafood flavor to our chowder. So you'll kind of start with it and we'll saute our vegetables in it. Okay. I've got all of our seafood cooked up. Don't worry, we will be throwing that back into our chowder at the very end so that it will cook up and marry in there. But again, we just want to get that nice flavor and searing on it. So I'm going to pull this off. We'll let those seasons kind of simmer down and then we'll saute our onions in there. But let's get to working on the rest of this. We are going to add in a 1/2 cup of our sourdough discard for this recipe, which makes them just delicious.
Yo has a question for you.
What's for dinner tonight? I actually have an idea of what's for dinner tonight. So my son Torin has been asking for our fried pork tenderloin sandwiches forever now. And so I bought some, those skinny pork tenderloins, the thin ones, and have some brioche buns. So we're going to make that tonight. Now I haven't decided what we're going to have with it as the sides, but I think that's going to be our main one. So Torin's going to luck out today because Snickerdoodles are his favorite cookie, and he loves my fried pork tenderloin sandwiches. which are delicious. I know they're not as common. They're very popular in the Midwest. They're just not as common outside of the Midwest, but they are delicious. Okay, we'll save this, feed it up for later. We're gonna cream this in to our egg, sugar, and butter mixture. There we go. Excellent. And again, having room temperature butter to start off with is going to allow this mixture to come together much better. We're going to add in a tablespoon of vanilla extract. So we've got 1 whole tablespoon of vanilla, a teaspoon of baking soda, 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar. And cream of tartar is going to be like the thickening agent for this to keep it binding it together and keep it nice and chewy. I'm going to actually do 4/2 because my 1/2 teaspoon fits in here nicely, but my teaspoon does not. So that's 1 teaspoon. And 2 teaspoons. And then we're going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And we're going to use actually a whole teaspoon of salt, because this is a big recipe. So a whole teaspoon of salt, and there it is. 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. And then we will also use 2 teaspoons later when we make our kind of pumpkin spice sugar to roll it in. Now, if you, again, I'm just adapting my snickerdoodle recipe to make a pumpkin spice snickerdoodle, but you can definitely just keep it the same and use 2 teaspoons of cinnamon instead. Let's get these guys all creamed together, and then we will add in our flour. But I want to make sure that baking soda gets all creamed into our cookie, or the base of it. That way we'll have like an even pop on it. Okay. Now, if you haven't bought your pumpkin pie spice, if it's sitting in your pantry leftover from last season, you might need a little bit more because spices dull over time. They're typically pretty fresh for 3 to 6 months after you buy them, but then they dull out. So they're not bad. You just need to add more to get the same flavor. Okay, let's do our flour. But while we're waiting, because we can kind of do double duty here, now that this is cooled down, I'm going to chop up my onion and we'll let it saute because I want it to caramelize. And onions always take a hot minute to caramelize. So I'm going to have this, chop it up, let it start going in. Right now we have our seafood kind of juices, spices, and oil. A little teensy bit more oil in there for the onion. But I want those spices to kind of marinate into the onion as it caramelizes. Here we go. So I'm just going to do a smaller dice on this. But to get the nice flavor to the chowder, I really want to make sure all my vegetables get kind of sauteed up so that they are lovely. Here we go. So I'm going to turn this guy on about a 4. We're going to add in just about another teaspoon or so more of olive oil. Now there already is a little bit left over from when we sauteed up our seafood. And we'll pop this in here. And then I'm going to give it a stir. And this is going to be the base to my seafood chowder. And then we'll finish up working on our pumpkin pie, spiced snickerdoodles. Here we go. So I'm just going to break that there, and then we'll make our little sandwich with our leftover challah bread from last night. Just give a quick rinse because I'm going to be rolling out these cookies in a second, and I don't want onion flavor on my hands to go onto them. Okay, this is a pretty good size recipe. So we are actually going to be using 2.5 cups of flour, which is a bit more than your typical cookie recipe, which typically uses around like 2 to 2.25 cups. This is going to be 2.5. But again, this makes a lot of snickerdoodles. So 2, and I'm using just all-purpose flour. Here we go. Pinch that out just a little bit. So,
I have a question. If someone's allergic to cinnamon, what's a good substitute?
That's tricky because cinnamon is such a unique flavor on its own. Now you could go and use cloves, but they're much more stronger in flavor, so you'd have to use a little bit less. But you can almost mix like cloves and brown sugar together, so to spread it out and use it. Same thing, you could put a little bit of nutmeg in there just to get some of those that flavor, like a mixture of it. But again, you can't really recreate that exact flavor, but those are kind of in that same family of it. We're going to mix these guys together until we have a lovely kind of dough here. And your dough will be, it will be super sticky. It will have a little bit of stick, but you'll be able to roll these just fine. There we go. Okay. Looking good. Now, again, you can also use a paddle mixture, like your stand mixer with this. And you can do it old-fashioned way if you want to. They all kind of turn out the same. Okay, we've got our base here. And now we're going to make our cinnamon sugar. Not our cinnamon sugar. We're going to do our pumpkin pie spice for this. Which pumpkin pie spice is literally just the store's way of putting your spices together. It typically has in cinnamon, ginger, allspice, nutmeg in it. We are going to do a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. Sometimes, depending if you make them bigger or smaller, you might need a little bit more sugar if you're making them smaller because it will go a little bit faster. Because you have more surface when you make a lot of little ones. And then we're going to put in 2 teaspoons of our pumpkin pie spice. So 1, 2. And then I'm just going to, before I mix that, I'm just going to give my onions a quick little stir here. There we go. And let's get a fork to kind of mix these together. Now again, snickerdoodles classically are just cinnamon and sugar mixed together, but I figured, you know, if Starbucks can come out with their pumpkin spice latte now, we can make some pumpkin spice snickerdoodles, change it up a little. Now we're just going to take a little ball of your dough, and again, it's sticky, but it's not so sticky that you can't work with it. And then you're going to roll it into the cinnamon or the pumpkin spice and sugar until it's coated. And then we'll place them right out here on our. And what makes these actually able to work with them is the cream of tartar in here. The cream of tartar allows it to hold together. But when we bake it up, we'll bake it up at 400. It bakes up pretty quickly for 9 minutes, but it gives you a soft yet chewy cookie. And I'm using my, my big 1.5 sheets because that way I can just do a cookie sheet at a time and get through them pretty quickly. I always try to make them the same size, but I realize that sometimes I grab. It's not always consistent. And I mean, you can do the 2 spoons and right there, but they actually come out with a better shape if you do the hand rolling in your like this. You've got to roll them through the sugar mixture anyways, so it doesn't make sense to try to do a cookie scoop and then pick them up and roll them. It's just is like the easiest way. Here we go. And these, again, they cook up pretty quickly, but on typically a higher temperature than you would most cookies. Most cookies cook between 350, 375. These are going to cook at 400 for 9 minutes. And you don't want to overcook them, because overcooking them is going to give you a crunchier cookie. And you want them nice and chewy. Here we go. So we'll get our first batch. I'll probably get 15 on this sheet. This typically makes, 2.5 sheets, almost 3 sheets. So think around, between 35 and 45 cookies, depending on how big you roll them or small. Here. And then we'll pop these in the oven and we'll start working on our chowder for this. And this dough, my kids love to eat the dough too. So if you're a big fan of dough, it is a delicious one. It has that nice kind of spice to it for it. Here. We're just about ready. We've got 2 more to roll up and then we can pop them in the oven for this. I always make sure you don't put them too close together because they will spread out some. You don't need to push them down or anything like that. Using that room temperature butter means it's going to spread out quicker than if you had a chilled dough. But they'll give you that perfect kind of chewy cookie. I think I took too much on that one. Let's see. Let's get this rolled in. And I'm going to wash my hands because they're a little sticky, and we'll pop these in the oven. Okay. Let's go get these in. You're going to want to cook these on the top rack. I always like my cookies, the top one, whenever you have to do the 2 batches, that bottom one always needs a little bit longer to cook. So they always turn out perfect when you just do it on the top here. And then I'm going to set my timer for 9 minutes. And we are cooking these at 400.
Yeah, question. What type of cookies?
So these are a twist on Snickerdoodles. So they are our Snickerdoodles, but instead of cinnamon, we used pumpkin pie spice. So they'll have just more of that fall-y kick to them, which I think will be absolutely lovely. Okay, our onions are looking almost perfect. So let's quickly peel up our carrots. We're going to quarter them and saute them up. And then we've got our celery that we're going to go in, and potatoes. And we can start kind of making our broth too. We also have some leeks and a green onion. So we're going to be using a lot of like onion family veggies today, because the celery, leeks, green onions, and our regular onion are all kind of in the same family. But it's going to make this just really delicious kind of base for our chowder, which sounds delicious to me. I feel like I've already converted over to soup season. We have actually been getting some nice cool weather here in Tennessee. Like this morning I woke up and it was like 50 degrees outside, and I was like, oh, this is nice. A nice little break from the heat. Okay, we're going to take our tops off. We'll take our bottoms off. And for these littler parts, I can chop them up just fine. Once we get a little bit thicker, I'm going to kind of quarter it. And that's just going to allow it to cook up a little bit faster than if you were to just leave them, full. And it's going to allow you to get a variety of vegetables in every bite instead of just like one big piece of carrot. There we go. So let's quarter. And then we'll throw these in to start sauteing with our onions that are cooking in kind of the spices that we sauteed up our seafood medley in, which honestly, it's actually a really great deal that you get in. I can find them both at Publix and at Kroger, which are kind of the two main chains where I live. There, and they're actually, it's really reasonably priced, and it's just clams, shrimp, calamari, and squid. So it's really great for chowders or paellas. Here we go. So let's add our carrots in. Oops. And then now that I'm over here, I'm going to turn it up. I had it on like a 3. I'm going to turn it up to about a 4.5 here. There we go. And then let's prep our celery. So I have 5 stalks of celery here. Let's just take off the top because that's always a little bit dried out. And then just like with the carrots, I'm going to kind of trim these up so they're not quite as big, so that you're getting smaller chunks of vegetables throughout versus just a great big piece of celery. Now, even if you don't like celery eating it raw, it does add great flavor to the chowder. So if you want to leave, you could cut it into like 3 big pieces, pop it in there, and then fish it out at the very end if you don't want to eat it part. But it does add a great flavor to the chowder, which you don't want to skip. But I can understand if you just don't like to eat the base of it, then you could always pull them out and not eat them. Just don't cut them up small. Okay. So we've got our celery in here. There we go. I'm going to pop our celery in and let it start to saute with my carrots and my onions now. So just going to, again, coat it up with all those great spices. And then for my potatoes today, I'm actually just using baby golds, baby Yukon golds. I love gold potatoes in soups because they keep their body in their shape. They're a waxier potato, unlike a russet. A russet is going to, if you cook it too long, it will completely turn to mush and disintegrate in your soup. But the gold potatoes, the red potatoes, all of those are going to keep their shape and keep, they'll get tender, which makes them a great choice for soups that you want the potato to still be in its shape. Now, if you're going to make like a vichyssoise or, like a pureed potato soup, then a russet would be great for that. But for just having potato chunks, a gold potato is going to be preferred. Okay, so I'm kind of cutting them up into I'm quartering them and then slicing in, because again, I don't want to have just a huge piece of potato in our chowder, but more of little chunks everywhere. This is also going to allow it to cook up faster, get tender faster. Now, again, the nice thing about this is you don't have to worry about your potato disintegrating since it's a waxier base. Okay, turn this up just a smidge. Our celery smells lovely in here. Let's put our potatoes in here. And we're going to give this a nice little stir. And then I have some fresh herbs that we're going to put in here as well. So I've got some oregano and thyme. So thyme is very, very lovely with our chowder. So I'm going to just take off the leaves and put the whole leaves in there. And then the oregano, I will kind of chop it up a little bit since it's a little bit more of a meaty spice. So again, we'll just slide these off. I picked up several sprigs out of my garden for this. But if you don't have fresh thyme, you can definitely use dried thyme. You probably want to put about a teaspoon of dried thyme in here. There we go. And the reason why you want to pull off the leaves is that little twiggy part can get pretty firm when you cook it up, and you don't want to be eating and feel like you have a stick in your soup. There we go. And it can take a hot minute to get through these, I feel like. But well worth it. Now, I also know some people who will use cheesecloth and they'll put their fresh herbs so they don't have to do any of the chopping really. They put them in a little cheesecloth bundle or one of those tea steepers, and then you can just throw it into your, your soup, and there you have all your spices there, flavoring up your broth, but without all of the texture of the spices or the extra work. Almost done here. This one's little. Okay, well, trust me, a little extra work and it will be worth it, guys. So let's give this a nice little stir. And again, we're sauteing up our vegetables for our seafood chowder here, which will add just great flavor and texture to our chowder. I'm going to get my oregano here. We're going to then throw in a bay leaf, and we'll sprinkle. Oh, I got to get my garlic too. I bought new bay leaves. We finally ran out. I feel like this is something that lasts you guys a long time. So we're going to for my oregano, again, it's going to be about a half a teaspoon chopped up of the fresh oregano, and you could use about a half a teaspoon of dried oregano as well. Here. Okay, let's take a quick, I'm going to turn this, and then we're going to go grab our cookies out of the oven because our first round is done. And look at our gorgeous pumpkin spice sourdough snickerdoodles. And so made just like our sourdough snickerdoodles, but instead of using cinnamon, we use pumpkin spice in replace of it to give it a little bit more of a fall festive flavor. Since I feel like it's getting to fall here, the weather's changing, and Starbucks now has pumpkin spice lattes. So Nick, when we rolled it in our cinnamon or our pumpkin spice sugar, you'll have that nice on the outside. It keeps their nice shape because we rolled them in the ball, and they're like a really pretty cookie. Now, you don't want to take them off your cookie sheet for about 5 minutes. They kind of firm up and hold them together. Also, if you tried to eat this right now, it's like liquid hot magma. You will burn your mouth. I say that more as a warning to my husband not to steal a cookie off the sheet right now. You will burn yourself. Okay, I've got my 2 bay leaves here. Because I want these seasonings to infuse in faster, I'm going to crush it up. When you crush it up, you actually don't really notice it. They kind of get a little bit softer, but they sink more to the bottom of your soup, but they add the flavor a little bit faster. Now, if you have lots of time to stew, you can keep it whole and then fish it out, but I find crushing it up just brings that flavor in so much faster. Okay. I'm going to make a little well here, and I'm going to just throw my garlic just in the middle of this well so it has a little bit of heat on its own because I meant to do that earlier.
Sharon sent you some gifts.
Well, thank you, Sharon. We appreciate that. So I've got about a teaspoon of my garlic or jarlic, and I'm just going to let it kind of cook up right in the middle there for a few seconds, 30 seconds or so. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to prep up my leek here because this is going to add, again, a little more flavor and meatiness to our chowder. And I'm going to just cut up the white part now, and then we'll add the greener parts later. The white part I find has a little bit more flavor and a little bit more body to it, so it doesn't wilt as easily. We'll add in the greener parts when we add in our green onion. So I'm going to give this a quick saute. Here we go. And now I'm going to coat this in a little bit of flour, and that's going to allow our chowder to thicken up for this. Because you got to, when you have, seafood chowder or bisque, you want a nice kind of a thicker soup. Now, I don't like mine to be like a gelatinous thickie. glutinous to it. So I use flour, but I understand that a lot of people have like, gluten allergies. So you can use cornstarch to thicken it up, but cornstarch is going to get you a slightly different texture to it. So this is going to give you a thicker, but it's not going to be smooth, like slimy, like a cornstarch. Cornstarch makes a great gel for like fruits and stuff like that. And you can use it in soups to thicken it up, but I prefer flour. It just feels a little bit more of a natural bisque. So I put about, a tablespoon or so over that right now. And we're going to mix it in, and then I'm going to add a little bit more to coat it. And I like to do this because this allows that flour to kind of marinate into all of our vegetables, and just lightly dust it over. You don't want any big clumps, but it's going to be about, 2 to 3 tablespoons of flour. Here we go. So now that it's all kind of coated here, and it smells delicious, I'm going to pour in my water. Now, you can use a vegetable broth. I'm going to be using water with a big scoop of my vegetable bouillon and a little bit. You can also use chicken broth, but I just like the bouillon because I can use more of it. I can get more flavor out of it with less liquid. I feel like a lot of store-bought broths are very, very bland. So we're going to add just a little bit in, and what we're going to do is kind of deglaze the bottom of our pot here, which is really scraping up at the bottom to bring out any of those cooked on bits to add more flavor to our chowder. We will also be using some cream in this, but we won't add that until the very end. But as you can see how our broth is just thickening up nicely with that flour in there. And again, you want to add little by little. You don't want to just dump it all in at one time because then you kind of flood it versus slowly letting it simmer together. So think about 1 cup at a time. Here we go. And before we add in our, just gonna move this right here, our last kind of cup of water, I'm going to add in a big heaping spoonful of our vegetable broth or vegetable bouillon. Now you could definitely use chicken bouillon for this. It works well. If you really, really want a bigger seafood kick to it, they do make a seafood bouillon, which works as well. But I find the vegetable is really lovely. Here we go. And we're going to add in our last cup. There we go. Once it comes to a nice kind of simmer here, we will add in our seafood and our chopped up, our leeks and our green onion, and then we'll add in cream finally, and then a little bit of pepper and salt if we need it. Okay, let me scoot this guy to the, well, we can scoot this to the side because I'll make more of these up in just a little bit. But let's get our sandwich, because when I make a soup, I love to dip my sandwiches into soup. And so last night we made homemade Italian meatballs and made a homemade challah bread. And I did kind of a garlic Parmesan flavor to it with oregano braided in. And we had a little bit left. It was like a loaf about that big. And I thought, oh, this will be perfect to make a sandwich with. And we're just going to go with a basic kind of like, I think Subway makes it. It's called the Italian like BMT. And it's just going to be essentially red onions, Gouda cheese, because I love Gouda cheese, hard salami, and pepperoni. Now you could jazz this up by adding a sun-dried tomato pesto or regular pesto or marinara sauce. But we're going to keep it fairly simple here. So I'm going to take my braided bread here, and I'm just going to cut it in half. That way we have our top and our bottom here. And I'm going to just still pinch because it's so good. I'm going to move my cookies over here. I know I'm putting them in danger territory because they are still hot. They're still hot. I'm going to grab down here and grab my skillet, and one's going to be missing. Okay. I'm going to just spread a little bit of butter on each side, and toast this up because I'm not going to kind of heat the whole sandwich up, but I do want to have that kind of nice buttery crust on it, like a toasted thing. So I'm going to turn my skillet on, and we'll just use a little bit on here. And this bread was so good. I kept stealing like parts of the braid last night over and over again. And I was like, okay, I need to walk away. Bread is my weakness. I love bread. It's just so good. Here we go. You know, it's funny. I think my love for bread started when I was a kid. And I used to set my alarm at like 3 in the morning to go down. We had a bread maker. Put these ingredients in the bread maker because it would take about 3.5 hours to cook a loaf of bread. So I would put it down, go and set my alarm going down so I could make homemade bread. I always made like a country white bread for my mom because she loved homemade bread, and I always loved to surprise her. And I didn't do it all the time, but I would surprise her every so often with that so she could wake up to homemade bread, because I think I got my love of bread from her because she probably loves bread a little bit more than me.
I have a question. What is the name of the pan that you're using?
This is a hex-clad griddle pan. It's a 12-inch griddle pan. Absolutely love it. It was one of those, it came as like a bonus in the 3-piece hex-clads that I bought. They're like, add this for $99. And I'm like, do I need this? Yes, you do. I use this for pancakes, tortillas, naan, grilled cheeses, like so many quesadillas. It's the best pan ever. And I really love hex-clad. I have 4 of their pans, and I have not scratched any of them. And I've had them for 2 years now with heavy use. I use my pans pretty much every day unless I'm on vacation. So they're great quality. They are more expensive, but I find that if you don't have to replace them every 1 to 2 years, like you do with a lot of the other ones, they're worth it. Now, we'll see. I've had some of my cookware, like my knife. This is going on like almost 17 years now. And I have my all-clad stuff that I use that is almost 17 years because they were wedding gifts. So they're going strong. So I highly recommend those as well. But I do have these in my Amazon storefront that links on my page. But I'm pretty sure I have this one in there because I love it. Okay, let's bring this up to a nice little simmer here. And we're going to add in this is our seafood that we sauteed up with some Old Bay and garlic salt. And this was the seafood medley blend. It's actually a frozen seafood package. But it has calamari, squid, shrimp, and clams in it, which makes it perfect for an easy, inexpensive seafood chowder, I should say. Because you get all those cool little bits of seafood in it, but you're not spending an arm and a leg on it. And for making a small batch too. It's also great for paella. Okay, pop those in there. We're gonna let them simmer now. And we're gonna throw in the rest of our leeks and then our green onions. We're gonna let this simmer up. And then at the very end, we will throw in our cream. But with cream, if you add it too soon and you're still having to do the heating process, it can curdle or get grainy. And I like to keep mine nice and smooth. So I always add it at the very end. We're gonna let this simmer for a few minutes. Then I will taste it and see how we are progressing.
You have a question. Where do you find the seafood medley?
So it is in the freezer section. I have found it at both Publix and Kroger, which are the 2 ones here, and Whole Foods actually has it in their freezer one. But it's like, where you can buy like the frozen shrimp and fish in there. It's just kind of like tucked away in a bag. I have another bag in my freezer so I can show you what it looks like, because it's like $6.99. So it's just called Seafood Medley, and it has, again, so not squid, it's octopus, kind of same thing, but it's delicious, and it's a good amount. Pop it in there. But I always like to keep a couple things like that in my freezer, so that if I want to whip up like a random seafood chowder day. My cookie, is it delicious? He stole one of my cookies. I told you it's a risk putting it over there. Well, since he's tried it, because I've never done it with pumpkin spice before, what did you think with the pumpkin spice? Is it a good addition? No, here, let me try it. He's so sweet. It's actually like perfect because it's not too sweet and not too in your face, but it has that really like a mild fall flavor. I like it. I'm gonna, as we get closer, I have kind of this rule. I won't do anything really with pumpkin yet until we get closer to October. I feel like September, August is about apples, and we're gonna appreciate apples and pears and cinnamon, and then we'll get closer to pumpkin. But I'm gonna try to do snickerdoodles with pumpkin in it to make an actual pumpkin spice snickerdoodle, but I'm gonna have to work on it. Okay, looks like we've got this nice and toasted up for our sandwich now. Look at that.
Could you use frozen shrimp?
Yes, you could definitely use frozen shrimp. Honestly, like you could make it a shrimp chowder. You could do clams. You can do canned clams. You could cut up crab if you wanted to. It's great. You can really use any random collection of seafood. You can do fish in it and make a fish chowder with it. Okay, let me turn this guy down because he's nice and simmering. And once you have your Dutch oven going, they'll stay there. But okay. Let's get our sandwich here. We're keeping it really simple, guys. But if you wanted to jazz it up, I would either do a basil pesto or a sun-dried tomato pesto, and that would add a lot of great kind of flavor here. I'm using Gouda, but provolone, Munster Havarti would all be a great one. I find that the milder white cheeses kind of work better with pepperoni and salami. We're gonna have cheese on both sides. And then I've got hard salami. You could also use like Genoa salami here. But my kids love salami, or I should say my daughter Evie loves salami. It's like this is like one of her favorite lunches that I pack for her is bagel with cream cheese and salami on it. So it's strange, but she loves it. She's my odd bird when it comes to food. And then we're going to do pepperoni, which is going to give you that nice kind of spice. Now, you could always get the deli cut pepperoni, but I always have regular pepperoni here because we make a lot of pizzas. And we're just going to load it up. This is going to give you that nice spice to it. And then technically, to make it truly like the Subway BMT, you would add ham on it. But we're just going to keep it, the salamis here together. I'm making this very meaty because this is more going to be my husband's sandwich than mine because I'm going to be loving on the seafood chowder. I love seafood chowder. I almost thought about, last night I prepped up my sourdoughs to kind of bake up, and I almost thought about making the mini bowls for one of them, but I opted not to because then I was like, you could scoop your chowder into a mini sourdough bowl and eat, and it would be delicious. Okay, let's get our red onions here. We're just going to do some thin slices. Again, one red onion will last you forever. So just keep putting it back in your fridge until you use it up because red onions are really only good eaten fresh. But we're going to add it on here to add just a little extra kick. And then again, this is my challah bread that I spiced up with Parmesan and garlic salt, and there's dried oregano in the dough as well. So we've got this great sandwich that will go with our soup. So let's finish off our chowder here because we've got a nice simmer on it, and it will be delectable. Okay, I'm going to taste it before we add in our cream to see if we need to add in any more spices. Now, you want it to be a little bit more salty and flavorful before you add in the cream because the cream is going to mellow it out. Perfect. I'm just going to add a little bit of black pepper and about a half a teaspoon just to get that little kick in there. But it has that nice, lovely seafood flavor, which I think really comes out because we sauteed the veggies are in the seafood like mixture. We're going to add in, I don't put a whole lot of cream in because we already made a thicker base, but I'm going to stir it up until I get the right thing. It's going to be between 1/3 and 1/2 cup of cream. So let's mix it in here. There we go. So by using that flour to kind of thicken up our soup, you don't need to use a lot of cream to thicken up the base of it. But look at this beautiful chowder. It is all ready. So we can serve up our dinner. Just going to steal one more taste. Excellent. Oh, yes, it is lunch. Okay. Let's get. I need to put my chowder in my cauldron because we love the cauldron here. Okay. I'm going to slide this guy over here. And we'll get a ladle for it. Okay. Let's cut our sandwich. I'm just going to kind of cut it in half. So look at our beautiful sandwich that we made on our homemade challah bread, full of salami, pepperoni, red onions, and then our bread is full of oregano, garlic, and Parmesan. And we have our delicious seafood chowder, chock full of onions, leeks, carrots, potatoes, and then a seafood medley that has clams, shrimp, octopus, and calamari in it. And then our broth is a kind of a rich broth that we made with vegetable broth, fresh thyme and oregano, bay leaves, and a little bit of cream to kind of smooth it all together. And then for dessert, we have our pumpkin spice snickerdoodle cookies, perfectly golden, soft on the bottom all the way through. Instead of cinnamon, we use pumpkin spice to kind of roll it in the dough for a kind of a mild fall spiced cookie. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, you can go to that link, search for what we made. So seafood chowder and pumpkin spice snickerdoodles, and you can watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear in it. It has my Dutch ovens, it has my hex-clad griddle pan in there, my cutting board knives, everything I use in the kitchen, in case you're interested. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.